Oh, sorry, Grant is presenting.
Okay, so I decided to go for the learning theory, design theory. 2 outcomes, learning outcomes, a thorough understanding of learning design theory, and application or mapping of learning design theory to a particular context. In the first activity, they view a slide cast on learning theory, and they're directed to read a particular PDF, and they watch a video. In the second activity...
And what do they do with that? In the first activity?
What do you mean? They're just viewing, reading and watching at that stage. Then the second aspect, yes, is that they reflect on that, all the information they've got from here, and they produce a blog summarising the key features. And each of these represents a blog from each of the students. They also, in addition to kind of reflecting on this material, they do a Google search on learning design theory, they read another chapter, and once they've done all that, they then collate all of this into a shared wiki of resources, which the tutor provides formative feedback on. They then read and comment on other people's blogs, and they also contribute to a discussion forum, which is seeded by the tutor in terms of some key questions. And the tutor provides, again, formative feedback on that discussion and summarises the key points. The key points from that are synthesised, both from the discussion forum and from the blogs, and they use all of that to produce their own individual essay or equivalent, which is 1,000 words, that the tutor provides summative feedback on. And here are the criteria against which that essay is marked. 10% of the relevant references to back up arguments, 10 on academic style, 5 on logically structured, 25 on critical reflection of learning design theory, and 25 on application and reflection on their own context. And either that can be formally marked in some way by a tutor as part of an accredited programme, or there would be a mechanism for peer marking if it's part of a wider MOOC.
Good.
And how long will it take them to do all that?
Well, a week.
Of how many hours?
100.
It is a very intensive week.
It's probably a longer week. It's probably more than 2 weeks. Probably 2. I reckon. But a lot of this material's there, so this is going to need to be produced, and this is going to need to be produced. But the other things are all pretty much available. So we'd probably choose a chapter, for example, from the LD Reader book. So it's not going to take long. Again, shouldn't take more than a day.
Right. This is a very intensive piece of work for the student, however long it takes, if it takes a week or 2 or longer. And clearly there is a need for the group to be moving sequentially, roughly, together. Otherwise, they cannot be productive members of that group without the input of others in the group. If this is a MOOC where people dip in and out at their own pace and whenever they want, how do you see this operating?
Well, if there's enough people in the MOOC, that's fine. As long as they've got some other blogs to look at, it's not a problem. So if you've got 500 people on the MOOC and you've got 10 people who are active, then you've got enough material to contribute to this. So it's not a problem. So it just does depend on the scale. And, I mean, where it fits chronologically is either it could go early on, because it's going to provide the underpinning theory for the other stuff, like mediating artefacts, like affordances, or it could come after the more practical instantiation. So it could be, okay, now you know about design representation, let's translate that into more theoretically grounded work on terms of understanding the nature of mediating artefacts in design.
I think, in terms of the tension we were talking earlier today between people who are fully committed and are here for the journey and people who dip in and out, I can see this working out quite nicely here, because somebody can just do the first activity, right? So they can just come in, view these resources, oh, that's nice, thank you very much, and see you some other week. Or they can do that and write a blog post, or they can go right all the way through and produce an essay.
Can I ask a question about the essay? Okay. So I
know it was coming. I know the question was coming.
No. Because you can accidentally write a blog post that's 1,000 words long. So obviously that it is an accident, because it's supposed to be 700 and it's always 1,000. I'm talking about my personal practice. So obviously there's a marking criteria.
And that's why I've said essay or equivalent.
Yeah. But it's interesting because to me, a 1,000-word essay is like a private blog post. And so, by essay, do you mean something that only the participant and the person who's assessing it sees?
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you think that would have a big effect on the? Do you think there'd be a difference in content between that and a blog post?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think they can choose to make it publicly available if they want to, but they can choose to keep it private if they want to as well. Mm-hmm. Obviously, if they're going down the MOOC route and you've got peer marking, they've got to at least share it with whoever's doing the peer marking.
Yeah. It was intriguing to me that the word essay, actually all it meant to me was private.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, if we go down the MOOC route, right, and say we use something like badges. So, you write an essay, somebody assesses it and gives you a badge. Now, the thing about the badge is I have to be able to verify that you've earned this badge. So in that sense, it has to be public. You see what I'm saying? Because there's, the only way of verifying it is that it's public.
Well, I say we. I was talking about it, but there were people nearby. So I think of that as collaboration. Is that one of the massive pedagogical differences between a MOOC and perhaps other forms is this sharing, this open sharing, and I think that that's absolutely central to what participants can find quite a shock as compared with their engagement with traditional notes. Yeah, and sometimes we forget because probably most of us blog or tweet or something like that, and it just brought it all back to me with the difference between blogging and an essay.
Yeah, there's an underlying theme here that if we're doing a MOOC, we are subscribing to a pretty radical transparency policy where everything is open and everything is viewable. And yet at the end of this week or 2 weeks of work, we have two routes, which suggests a private route, kind of class A student, as I was saying, and class B star, those are the ones who will go on the MOOC. And I was wondering if that generates yet another conflict or tension.
Well, I think that the private essay concept only becomes contentious if by private you mean that it gets scrutinised by an expert, and that's the big difference, isn't it? Is that if you write an essay, then you want an expert to mark it, don't you? If you write a blog post, then your expectations might be a bit more flexible in terms of the feedback that you get and where it comes from. So I wonder what would happen if you told students to write essays and then said that they were going to be peer assessed, whether that would be something that would be cross-cutting in terms of their expectations. I honestly don't know.
The other thing is I think you could have a number of different kind of badges for this. You could have a badge to evidence that the student is critically reflective. You could have one that is around good understanding of learning design theory, one to do with application, whatever, one to do with peer review. So you can actually have a number of badges.
But I don't know how you'd award them in a way that was deemed to be fair unless there was a single point of authority in terms of badge handing out.
I just wonder why the essay is necessary at all, because the student has already produced here and has produced here. Wouldn't the student then say at the end, just choose your two, your best blog post and your best discussion entry or something? This
is their initial kind of synthesis of LD and kind of internalisation of all this. This is them thinking about it and discussing it with others, and this is applying it to their own context. So that's the sort of three different stages.
It just looks almost like a whole course to me.
What about? I was thinking. Actually, that should be your question, Dave. But instead of blogging, what if they tweet? Does it still work? So in the first phase, or the second activity, is there? Do you think that there's a significance to the medium, or there could be?
I think there is. I mean, the blog is used because it's a good medium in terms of affordances for reflection. The wiki is good because it's a good way of aggregating resources. It might not be a wiki; it might be Pinterest or Scoop It or something like that.
Or a shared document.
This is good in terms of dialogic learning, and this is good in terms of them reflecting and applying. So each of the tools or activities are designed to kind of bring out different aspects of
so in a way, actually, this pattern could be applied to other themes or topics in the MOOC as well, not just to,
Indeed.
you know. So in a way, it's. I mean, I could even see it applying to the representations, except there, instead of blogging, they would be curating.
Yeah. And then one thing
right.
we could think about, actually, that's an interesting point. I'm not sure, I haven't got an answer to this either way, but just throwing it out. We might want to actually have a standard structure for each section. So it's, you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. So it's like personal production, discussion, collating, discussion, application.
I think one thing's for sure, if you're going to pick a kind of reflective platform, it needs to stay the same one throughout the whole course. Otherwise you're asking too much of people, unless you have an optional section of each session which is a bit wacky and experiential and people do it at their own risk. But blogging's an interesting one because you have to decide whether there's an expectation that participants will go about finding their own blogging platform, or whether you provide one, or whether you recommend one, or a combination of all of those things.
And also, I mean,
because starting up a blog is not a totally simple thing to do, is it?
But it might be that we, I mean, what we did in the OU course, MAODE, is they could be provided with a blog tool, or they could use their own. And then we could, if they use their own, we just had a space where you could collate what they were. I agree with you, it's not trivial, but if you're using it every week, they're going to get used to it.
But then we are looking at standardised instruction design models, essentially. I mean, it's very similar, in fact, to, you could say that the iCare model, for example. Yeah. So really, we're saying, right, we're going to adopt a specific instruction design model to teach learning design. Potentially problematic.
Okay.
Okay, I think we should wrap up now.
We need to wrap up, exactly. Yeah. Just a final point is we have 3 weeks or 3 chunks or 3 elements which were set out to be decided by each team effectively, and you came up with different things. We decided, well, we discussed at least the idea that the OER bit could precede that other group there, because they could do with knowing a bit about licensing before going on to curation and sharing and so on. Where would that fit?
Well, as I said, I think this could either fit at the beginning, but it's a bit heavy going, or it could follow on from some more practical elements and say, now you've learned about copyright and representations, let's have a look at what the underlying theoretical perspectives are. I think that would be better.
If it's heavy going and you put it at the beginning, you'll lose half of
them by the end
so
of it.
So I would put it, I agree, I would put it a bit further down the line.
I think that brings us to the end of that activity.
Great.
And
do I get a clap?
Yes. Well done.
I'm going to take